A few weeks ago, Pinecrest invited Chad Songi to come to our school to share his story, poetry, and comedy with the students. Everyone was extremely engaged with his relatable presentation because not only did he get the entire high school to clap 5 times in a row without messing up, but he also made us laugh, and we liked that. We needed that. It was in the middle of the presentation when Chad requested some helpers on stage to spark a little competition. I was expecting the entire high school to raise their hands so that they could participate, but to my surprise, only 6 or so people volunteered. It seems as though it was the same people that volunteer for everything. A number of people likely wanted to go on stage, but let that opportunity fly over their heads while secretly wishing they had raised their hands in the first place. But why didn't they? Were they scared of being embarrassed? Were they too shy, too lazy, too cool to be an assistant? Or maybe, just maybe, they felt inhibited. Well, what does it mean to be inhibited, and how does it relate to one's identity? Being inhibited, or inhibition, is a feeling that makes one self-conscious and unable to act in a relaxed and natural way. Inhibition limits our true identity, which is the way we express ourselves to the world. Inhibitors, the force that makes you feel restricted in the first place, can come in forms that we sometimes can or cannot control. An example of an inhibitor that may be out of our reach is one's socioeconomic status, or class in a classroom. What I mean by class in a classroom is that, in general, students come from a variety of backgrounds, with some being more advantaged than others. In general, we would like to think that a classroom should be free of class bias, with all of us having an equal chance to learn, express our knowledge, and succeed. However, inhibitors exist in the classroom. This idea was presented when researcher Bell Hooks made a book, and her book suggested that race and class are huge factors inside of schools. She explains how even though there's supposed to be free speech in classrooms, socioeconomic levels determine who has the power to speak, especially if the people's ideas are being less popular than the overall social behavior of the classroom. This can result in those people feeling disrespected and unheard, which Hooks explains can inhibit the class as a whole by limiting the free flow of differing values and ideas. In my opinion, the biggest inhibitor that we can control are situational inhibitors. Remember the example about how no one raised their hand during the assembly? This was a perfect example of a situational inhibitor, because it is understandable that many of us are reluctant to put ourselves out there in front of our fellow classmates and risk failing or embarrassment. We have an extreme amount of pressure on us to be perfect, or at least we think we do. Because of this, we subconsciously give in to the peer pressure around us. We may not take chances. We may miss opportunities because we're afraid of what other people may think about us. These are inhibitors. So we all have these safe places where we can be free from some of our inhibitors. Your safe place can easily be your bed, it could be hanging out with friends, or even just listening to music. It's so important to find these safe havens because we all need to be able to take a break and ponder whether or not these inhibitors are really worth affecting our individuality in the first place. We need to find a fair balance between inhibitors and facilitators, which enhance who we are and therefore increase our uniqueness. Just like many other teenagers, I've personally struggled with acknowledging my problems of toxic friendships, relationships, and of course, stress. One place that I found safety from some of my inhibitors was my summer camp, Camp Tawanda. I think the biggest reason why I felt so free from my restrictions was because I was literally in the middle of nowhere, the depths of the Pocono Mountains, without any electronics, for 7 weeks. Can you imagine weeks without worrying what Cardi B names her baby? Or if Justin and Haley got engaged? I had no idea. Well, for me, that experience was needed because without technology and stress from school, I could actually come to terms with what I needed to do to make myself happier. What I learned from being away at camp is that reducing the number of inhibitors makes you appreciate who you are and allows you to naturally express yourself without being held back. This was such a freeing concept, but when I got back from camp, I truly had a culture shock. I was being bombarded with reality, and over time, I seemed to have forgotten how everything was at home, how different everything was. Soon, I realized what I needed to do. I needed to place myself back into reality. So I thought, how can we create a situation back at home that reduces our inhibitions, like an external summer camp, so that we can demonstrate our real identity? In Mr. Spitzig's Period 1 geometry class, we've unknowingly solved this equation. Every morning, right before our class officially starts, my classmates and I voluntarily begin our day with a poll. These polls that my classmates and I create in class are completely arbitrary. For example, we ask questions like, do you prefer grape jelly or strawberry jelly? It's grape jelly, by the way. Gatorade or Powerade? Jersey Mike's or Jimmy John's? Is it route or route? I know it seems a little silly and probably even irrelevant, but this game has completely altered our mornings. Instead of rushing to the classroom, dreading the start of class, my peers and I anticipate beginning our day with a fun little poll. With this inclusive warm-up activity, my classmates and I become uninhibited by reducing the amount of distractions on our mind. We all participate without worrying what the right answer is or how others are going to judge us. Not only that, but it's actually quite interesting to hear all the diverse opinions. We end up feeling more connected with the students around us. But Period 1 figured it out. We realized that it's not so easy to break from our inhibitors and that life is not as simple as being away at summer camp. I don't even think our goal in life should be trying to live a certain way without inhibitors, but trying to lessen them. We should encourage ourselves and others to resist succumbing to our inhibitors. Here is one simple thing that you can do in order to achieve this. Literally, do not let other people's opinions hold you back. We've all been in that classroom, the classroom where you see a level of disinterest and the discussion has silence, but you have something to say. However, you give in to the silence and you don't raise your hand. Be the student that raises your hand. Be the student that contributes to the discussion. By changing the perspective and creating a new, controlled, safe place, it allows you to express yourself the way you want to be seen by the world. You see, we are on the brink of finding ourselves. We're so close to figuring out who we are, but first, it's important to push the inhibitors aside and work on creating an environment that allows you to do this in the first place. Raise your hand in the assembly. Experience facilitators in life and add your tally mark on the board. We don't have to let our inhibitors define us. Thank you.